Hey, Kids Cook Real Food. Katie Kimball here for the Healthy Parenting Connector, where our goal is to connect you, parents who really desire to raise healthy kids, with the experts who have the information you need. We're all about growing connection, confidence, and creativity in those kids and really raising the health of the young generation. And let me tell you, a big piece of health that's free but often understated is sleep, right? It doesn't cost any money to improve our kids' sleep, and it's a huge, huge pillar of health. So I'm honored to host Kim West here today. She's known as the Sleep Lady, and we're going to talk about how to build that connection time into the sleep process where it's sleep coaching without so much being alone and crying. Thank you so much for being with us, Kim.
Thank you for having me, Katie. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, this is going to be good. I have to tell you that ironically, even though my youngest is 6 and we don't deal with a lot of sleep issues anymore, I saw him 4 times in the night and he was in my bed twice. And that never happened. So I was like, I can't believe I'm doing this sleep interview today.
He knew you were talking to me.
It's crazy. Like that does not happen. So I was thinking about you in the middle of the night. I bet most people who interview you don't say that. um, but let me tell the audience a little bit about you, Kim, so they know who we're talking to.
Okay.
Kim, by trade, is a licensed clinical social worker, known as the Sleep Lady, but by vocation, she's a mom of 2 daughters, and that's where a lot of this experience and need in her own life has grown. Over the past 25 years, Kim has helped over 20,000 exhausted parents around the world get a good night's sleep without letting their children cry it out alone. And that just makes my heart so happy. She's a sought after expert from people like Dr. Phil, Good Morning America, the Wall Street Journal. She's like super rock star. And probably more importantly, she's authored 3 books all about this sleep lady method. And the primary book, the Sleep Lady, Good Night, Sleep Tight, sold 120,000 copies in 4 languages and resulted in Kim needing to train more people. So she's got a whole coaching program. And this is happening all around the world, connecting moms and dads and babies and toddlers and preschoolers at night and helping those kids get a good night's sleep, which is really the foundation of health. So, so, so good. Now, Kim, by the time we are moms or dads, I think all of us get a sleep story or two. I remember that time.
Yep.
What brought you in particular to be so interested in sleep with like all the other pieces of health that affect our kids?
Mhm. So I had a family therapy practice, and I was pregnant with my first daughter, who's now 26 years old. And my older brother and his wife came with their newborn. Both of their kids are 6 months older than both of my kids.
Oh, cousins.
And and they're like a pretty solid couple, or they still are, by the way. But they arrived for I think it was Thanksgiving, or I can't remember, some holiday, and they were unraveled. They were like, oh my gosh, this kid never sleeps. Denise was like, I'm going to have to quit my job. I can't function at work. And we are definitely not having any more children. And I was like, what? You mean this is a thing? This is a problem? Don't they just eat, sleep, and poop and everything's good? And and so when I get anxious and worried about something, I start researching. And of course, then they didn't have the internet, but I got out books. And at the time, there was only one book, and that was Dr. Ferber's book,
Oh,
Solving a Child's Sleep Problem. And I had to go to the library to get it. God, I sound like a dinosaur, but it really wasn't that long ago, right, that this was true. And I decided that maybe, knowing what I know about child development and how creating a secure attachment is such a cornerstone of emotional health, that I thought, I wonder if there could be another option other than leaving your child to cry. And so I went ahead and had my baby and got some bad advice, and decided on that I wanted to create something different, that I wanted to see if there was a way to do this and not leave your child to cry it out. And so my older daughter, I always say she's my guinea pig. Luckily, she's turned out really well. She's a fabulous young adult. But I learned from her. And then I learned from all my friends and friends of friends. And then it just got so, I was getting so many phone calls of people I no longer were not in my closest inner circle. And it was my sister-in-law, Denise, who said, Kim, you got to add it to your practice.
Mm.
And I still thought, well, maybe I was lucky. And so let me go have this second baby, because I was pregnant with my second one. And I did. I had her early, unfortunately, and she had horrible silent reflux. And once I got her sleeping, of course, after any medical conditions were resolved, then I thought, okay, you know what? I'm on to something. Because that was a challenge. She was my alert baby, which ended up being really 80% of my practice. And so that was it. And then I just started charging them to help people. And it just spread like wildfire, because when your child's not sleeping and they then start sleeping through the night, it transforms your life.
Mm-hmm.
The whole entire family. And so it's just been the most fantastic career ever, because I love helping people transform their lives.
Oh, so sleep chose you.
I
And
guess
I think what's
so.
really key here is that you saw a deficit. You said there's not enough information here. This
Mm,
method doesn't feel congruent with the way I know as a therapist and as a loving mama that I want to raise my baby. So I need to create a new way. And it worked.
yeah,
And now this is what
yeah.
you do. It's beautiful.
I mean, I don't want ever any listeners or parents in general to feel like, well, I did, cry it out and it worked okay. Does that mean I damaged my child? Um, that's not the message I want to give. I really want families to just know they have choices. So it's not cry it out or suffer for months or years,
Right.
that there are options that you can try. Or if you've tried cry it out and it didn't work, that there's also options.
Mm-hmm. And we know, I mean, we have to have no regrets in parenting. We can't change the past. We do our best with what we know at the
Yeah.
time. So now we're about to expand that knowledge base for a lot of people. Kim, can you give us sort of like the 2 minute, 30,000 foot overview
Mhm.
of what it means,
Mhm.
gentle sleep coaching without crying alone? What does that look like?
So my method is called the Sleep Lady Shuffle. And to really give you the overview, and I think this is helpful for everyone to hear, is that let me just tell you about the 3 columns of sleep training, or
Perfect.
really any behavioral modification. So one is complete extinction. That means put the baby in the crib or the child in their room, leave, don't go in all night, period. Right? That one, of course, is supposed to be the most successful, but the hardest to follow through with for
Yeah, I
kind of
tried that once.
obvious
It nearly
reasons,
killed me.
right? And then the next one, which is where Ferber falls in, is graduated extinction. That means put the baby in the crib or the child in their room, awake, of course, leave, and then you can go back and check on them in increments,
Okay.
5, 10, 15, 20. Some people say you can pick up, some people say you can't, right? But some variation on that until finally they just go to sleep. And then the third one is what I call parental fading, and really is what's in the behavioral science field. And so that's where my method falls in. And that's basically put your baby or child in their crib or bed awake, but then you stay offering them physical and verbal reassurance as they learn the skill of putting themselves to sleep. So you start doing less and less and move away as they integrate the skill themselves. Because after all, they only learn those skills from us initially. So this kind of goes into one of the other questions that most parents ask me, is like, but what about crying? Do you want me to talk about that, Katie?
Sure. Is there no crying? Is crying okay?
So there's no such thing as a no cry sleep solution. Even though I know there's the book out there, it's really an unfair promise. So think of it this way. If we have taught our child that the way you go to sleep is mommy or daddy, rocks you to sleep. And then, they're getting old and your back is hurting and you're finding you're having to rock them back to sleep in the middle of the night too, multiple times. You say, that's it, I've had enough. And you put them into the crib, and whatever sleep training method you're going to choose, they're going to protest. And if they're pre-verbal, they're going to cry. And if they're verbal, they're going to cry and have words for you, right? Like, I don't want to do this. No, mommy, no, daddy, whatever it is.
Yes.
Stay with me. So I think it's all about how do we reduce the crying? And I have lots of little tips on that. And how we respond to the crying. And I'm really kind of pro respond, but it's all in how you respond without doing it for them. Yeah, but more reassuring.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I like that idea of parental fading. It really is comparative to all of parenting. We do more for the children while they're little, and then we gradually phase ourselves out until they think we're unnecessary, even though we still know we are necessary as they're young adults.
Right.
And it's what we teach too at Kids Cook Real Food. We say demonstrate, guide, coach to independence. And that coach to independence is like staying close, redirecting with your words, kind of similar to what you're talking about at the crib side
Totally.
or the bedside.
Yep.
Let's have some quick fun. Let's do some like 15-second rapid fire questions.
Right.
When to start sleep coaching? What age?
The ideal age is 6 months.
6 months. And is it flexible and personal, or is it like a step-by-step system?
I train my coaches, and what I've always done for 25 years is absolutely customized, because every family is different and unique. There may be core elements that are the same, but you have to personalize it to the family's values and their goals, their child's temperament, their own temperament, and what they can follow through with consistently.
So good. And you've got resources in your book, which I just devoured, even though I'm not even quite in that phase of life anymore, for like, it seemed like every kind of personality and milestone, and just amazing. I think most parents would say they appreciate structured yet flexible. And that's what you're talking here. What is the biggest secret to success with sleep coaching?
Consistency, that the parents are a united front, that they're not agreeing to something that they fundamentally don't feel good about, right, in their heart and in their gut. And that once you start, you follow all the way through. Because that's where we unfortunately can start to create more crying in our children, when we are inconsistent in our responses, which is
yes, it's not fair to them
tired.
when we're unclear. And I'm sure that's often your answer as a therapist and social worker. Like, how do we make this work? Consistency, follow through. It's not an easy prescription, but it is vital. Now, we're not going to dig into like newborn sleep under 6 months today, but I just wanted parents to know that in the book, there's a whole section on that. Super helpful. But if you're willing, can you describe your signature move, that sleep lady shuffle, for helping babies starting at 6 months learn to sleep on their own?
So what we always do is we always start at bedtime, right? Bedtime is the easiest time to learn to put yourself to sleep.
As in not nap time.
Correct.
Bedtime. Got it.
Yep. So I always like to give this example. Friday night is the most popular night to start sleep training, for obvious reasons, I guess. So if you're going to start Friday night, then your job during the day, Friday, is to make sure that your child gets great naps any way you can get them. Fill the daytime sleep tank so that we can have also an age appropriate, early enough bedtime. And then we start sleep coaching there, which means we have a soothing bedtime routine. And then our child goes into their crib or bed, calm but awake and aware, no tricking them, slipping them into the crib or the bed, laying down with your older child and then getting up when they're already asleep, because then our child wakes up and says, what the heck, what happened? Right?
That's like my life, Kim. I wish I'd known you 15 years ago.
I hear that a lot. I understand. So then you stay with your child doing less and less. And I usually have you stay for 3 nights. And then you move away incrementally every 3 nights and doing less and less in those first 3 nights. I think it's particularly uh, helpful, this method and approach for these particular groups. One, children who are adopted and not at birth. So we're being very sensitive to attachment,
Sure.
and building that attachment and bond first. And then children with any special needs. And then I think, and this might really be helpful for your audience, is children in beds. Because when we do something like, look, I'm sick of lying down with you and sleeping with you all night, because a lot of times what happens is parents will fall asleep at bedtime lying down with their child and then wake up at like 2 a.m, right? Or I've had a lot of parents who are like, I just sleep the whole night there.
Yeah.
And so when they say, I've had enough, then they start leaving the room and the child comes out. And if you return them, which I've seen that happen 30 times, lots of times we tend to lose our patience and say, just stay in your room and lock the door. And then that can create all kinds of anxiety for the child. And then the parent feels guilty, and it kind of all falls apart. So I really am biased in this regard. I think a gentler method like this works better with kids in bed. And it's never too late.
Ooh, good point.
Mm-hmm.
So
Might
even
be a
if my
little
child
harder.
is a kindergartner or a first grader who's constantly getting up for a glass of water and all the other things at night, the sleep lady shuffle still applies.
Absolutely. Yep. My
Uh-huh.
book goes all the way up to 6 years of age.
I love it.
Mhm.
I hope you are familiar with the Jim Gaffigan sketch on reverse hostage negotiation. What does it take for you to just stay in there? Like, we've all been there.
Well,
Not maybe not all. Most of us have been there.
I really like to take, an all systems approach with kids in beds and really get them involved in the process, and having a family meeting and using a sleep manner chart, not a rewards chart, and really, empowering the child to learn this vital life skill of putting yourself to sleep.
Yeah, I can't believe how many similarities there are in the way you talk about sleep and the way we talk about food and teaching kids to cook too. I know for a lot of parents, feeling that real connection with their kids and maybe words like attachment parenting. I know I was a big Dr. Sears fan when I was a young mom. Does this fit into the Sleep Lady shuffle? I mean, I know it does because I read your book and I was very happy about that. But how does attachment parenting merge with the shuffle?
Um, I think the other thing I think it also aligns with, by the way, is the positive discipline approach in
Mm,
parenting too. So if you probably saw in my book, Good Night, Sleep Tight, I go over the core principles of attachment and how I believe that the Sleep Lady Shuffle aligns with that, in that, this is gentle, responsive, respectful, of the child and parent, and that you're creating that secure base. So I love the metaphor, even though I don't love that it's a military metaphor. But Ainsworth and Bowlby, who wrote attachment theory, which is not the same as attachment parenting, right?
mm-hmm.
Is that we are the family, or the parent should be the secure base, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they use the metaphor of like an army base. Like everybody comes, you get fed and cared for and slept, and then you go out into the world, and that your child always can come back to that secure base. And so I think that that's what we're doing in sleep coaching, that I also like the metaphor, which I think aligns too with the attachment parenting, is, if I'm a coach to a soccer team, and and the kids are out there and they're playing, and then let's say we lose the game, or we're losing the game, and we have a meeting, and I'll maybe give them some constructive feedback, like pass the ball more, or whatever it is that needs to happen, and then give them support for all the great things that they're doing. But in the end, I, the coach, can't get on the field and make the goal for them. I might want to, right? Just like, we've had, I'm sure, examples in parenting, where you're upset the way another child treats your child and you want to go intervene, right? But we coach our child. So I think that my coaching method is like that, right? I'm there for you, child, to support you and reassure you, but I can't put you to sleep
Yeah.
anymore. And but I'm here to support you while you learn the skill. And that is very aligned with attachment, creating a secure attachment theory and an attachment parenting.
Beautiful. Yeah, it's not our job to sleep for our children. And in fact, it's literally physically impossible,
Right.
which is why we need to release that responsibility and
Just
teach
like
them.
just like you can't make them eat broccoli
Mm-hmm.
or poop on the potty, right?
Yep, those are the things, eat, sleep, and poop. They know we can't make them do it. That's why they're the hard parts about parenting. I like in your book, Kim, that you really spend a lot of time at each phase. In fact, in infancy, every 3 months really has like a whole chapter. And we're not going to dig into all of those, but I want parents to know they're there. Let's jump to sort of like toddlerdom. What do you hear from parents most pressing in the like 2.5 to 5 year old age range?
That their child gets out of bed a million times, won't stay in bed, gets up at 4 a.m. And yeah, those are it.
Yeah. Do you have like any like quick tips or just like a balm for parents' soul that they can get through that phase?
Uh-huh. Um, so I mean, there's so much I could say, my goodness. I would say make sure that your child's bedtime is early enough. Most children are going to bed too late. And when we miss our bedtime window, notice how I said we, because we have one as adults too, because we all have an internal clock or circadian rhythm that tells us when to be asleep and when to be awake. And when we miss that window, the body secretes alerting hormones, making it harder to go to sleep and harder to stay asleep. Okay, so that's super important. So I always like to say, do the math backwards. So I'm just going to say 2, even though you said 2.5, just because the math's easier. A 2-year-old needs on average 11 hours of sleep at night and 2 during the day. And so if they have to wake up at 7 a.m. to go to wherever, pre and post pandemic, then they need to be asleep by 8 p.m., not starting the routine. So looking at that, or as I say, doing the math backwards, can be really helpful, because a lot of times, we're cleaning up the kitchen or we're looking through our mail or whatever it is, checking our emails and we're missing the window. We're missing the signs that our child is tired and needs to go to bed. That and also having a bedtime routine that's soothing, not rushed. Some kids more than others. Ideally without screens. I'm a big picture book reading with your child advocate, even when they can read themselves. Lots of really amazing research on that and how helpful it can be. And I think now during this time in our world, we really have to help our kids, as one of my friends calls it, empty their worry buckets. So
Ooh.
that when the light goes off, they're not trying to process their whole day. Um, and this goes true for all the kids, right? All their ages. And so normally, or not normally, often we do this at bedtime, but sometimes we need to do it earlier, particularly when you have a sensitive child or a child who's already feeling a little anxious, or maybe you, the parent, are feeling anxious too about everything that's going on. And our kids have their own anxiety and they're picking up where we are. That sometimes it's good to empty the worry bucket at dinner or before dinner or on the way home if you pick them up from wherever, an activity. So really helping them learn to regulate their emotions and be able to shut their thoughts down and be able to go to sleep.
You just dropped so many gems for parents. And I got to start with what people call the second wind, right?
Yes.
You explained it in like nice science words about hormones and stuff. I think many of us adults, we talk about the second wind in a positive way. Oh, I got my second wind.
Right.
That's borrowing from tomorrow's awake bank,
Hmm.
right? You're
Right.
stealing tomorrow's energy when you get that second wind. That means you missed your window as an adult. If your kids get their second wind, that means they missed their appropriate sleep window. So that is gold. If your child is getting out of bed at night, it's highly possible they need not a later bedtime. It's not that they're too awake. You might have missed their proper bedtime and you need to dial it back. Do the math, right? Do the math. It's not the right solution for everyone, but in our fast paced American culture where we don't always value sleep as
Yep.
much as we should, that is a gem. That is a gem. And then emptying the worry bucket. Oh,
Yeah.
so their thoughts aren't scrolling at night. Like, and that's, I think that applies to every age, right up to age 100. Kim,
Yep.
that's amazing.
It does. It does.
So,
One other thing I'd love to share with your audience that it is so often missed, um, is that there also can be underlying medical causes of your child's sleep problems. And I think what ends up happening for us as parents is we don't know what the common symptoms are, or we think that those things only apply to adults. And then our pediatrician may or may not be trained to know the correct questions. Many of them don't get education on sleep. And then we're like two ships passing in the night. And so often when I go and do public speaking and there are older kids, so often the parents are like, oh my God, you just described my child. So if it's okay with you, Katie, I just want to go over like some of the top kind of sleep wreckers.
yeah, that's great.
Okay, so asthma. So, and in particular, and the medication used to treat asthma that has stimulating steroids in them at times or sometimes, reflux, untreated reflux, and constipation, and restless leg syndrome, which doesn't always have to be legs, and can be easily diagnosed and treated through blood test and increasing iron. And then the last one is obstructive sleep apnea, which a lot of people think, oh, only adults get that, but no, indeed, children get that too. And so what you want to look for is your child mouth breathing, loud breathing, snoring, sweating when they sleep, and or very restless sleeper. All their pillows and blankets end up on the ground. They may have even sometimes fallen off of their bed. Um, and those are just some of them. But if you dig even deeper, but if you have any of those, I really want you to go back to your pediatrician and say, can you check my child's adenoids and tonsils? Or do you need to refer me, or you go directly, depending on your insurance, to an ear, nose, and throat doctor and have them check that? Because untreated obstructive sleep apnea will interfere with learning. And they've even done a study that showed that they studied a group of children who were diagnosed with ADHD, and 25% of them did not have ADHD. They had obstructive sleep apnea.
Amazing. That's a huge number. It's huge.
Number. So I just want to do a shout out on that, particularly, if a lot of your readers have school age children.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you definitely described many of my kids as far as the restlessness. And I remember one day walking into my daughter's room to just, do the check before I went to bed at 11 or whatever. And I couldn't find her. She had not only fallen off her bed, but she had then scooched under her bed.
Wow.
All I could see were her feet. And I echo the mouth breathing too. I don't think my kids have quite sleep apnea, but they have dust allergies, which cause them to mouth breathe, which reduces their quality of sleep, reduces their human growth hormone. It seems like a tiny little thing, but it's this huge cascading effect on all of health, focus, attention, learning. It's wild. So I really appreciate you giving those tips, those foundations that you need to check really before you implement just behavioral sleep, techniques. And let's talk about food too, because we're all about food here at Kids Cook Real Food. And I know that whole body health food can affect sleep. I don't know that everyone always is like cued into that. And so I think parents often ask me, like, what constitutes a good bedtime snack? Now, we teach you got to have at least 90 minutes between dinner and a snack, but some families might eat early enough that they get that bedtime snack. Any practical ideas for what will kind of satiate those little bodies overnight?
I mean, I've always heard things like um, high carb, low protein before bedtime, but honestly, I'm not a big supporter of snacks before bed.
Okay.
Because I mean, you're saying 90 minutes, and so then that to me wouldn't be right before bed. So I'm going to go with whatever your advice is on what that snack should be at 90 minutes. What I try to get parents to move away from, particularly when your child is, growing well, healthy, and over the age of 1 year, really, they shouldn't really, what they eat right before bedtime does not correlate with how much they sleep, like it is when they're little, right?
Sure.
So just like you and I aren't supposed to have a snack right before bed, right? I'm the same supporter for our children. And on top of it, I don't want kids to go to bed with milk and food on their teeth, because we know that causes cavities, and it's really tough to do cavities on a 3-year-old.
Oh goodness, yes. Well, and I mean that's the best answer is what's the best snack before bed? If your kid's already, especially school age, they probably don't need one. In fact, more likely so, their digestive system needs that break.
Yeah.
And all the process of digesting could almost potentially even keep them awake at night. So ironically, I've heard the best bedtime snack is high fat.
Oh,
And
okay.
not high and low carb, because carbs digest so fast. So the point is, no snack before bed is most likely the best answer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, what about some of those tricky transitions where maybe parents have sleep down and then they're weaning or they're co-sleeping or they're trying to get rid of the pacifier? Um, are those sleep wrecking opportunities, or can you sleep lady shuffle right on through them?
Absolutely. We can address all of those transitions or problems or whatever you want to call it. Totally. I added that my third edition of my book came out this March. And for the first time ever, I added in a section on how, if you want to continue to co-sleep, how to do it safely
Uh-huh.
and increase your sleep.
I appreciated that section because you said, it's not like co-sleeping and sleep coaching is mutually exclusive.
Right.
They can totally coexist. So super cool. Why is all this sleep coaching so important for families?
Because, well, if I understand your question correctly, I think it's teaching our children how to put themselves to sleep and back to sleep is one of our many parenting tasks, to teach this life essential skill. I really think of it as learning self-regulation in general. And it is something that takes time and happens over the course of our life. It's not only is it how do I put myself to sleep, but how do I shut my mind off? What do I do when I'm bored or angry or overwhelmed, or right? All of these feelings. So,
Mm-hmm.
and going to sleep is just one of them.
Yeah, so definitely a life skill. We need to teach our kids
Mhm.
how to sleep, even though all those pictures of kids with their face in the spaghetti and the high chair make it look like it's, an instinctive process. Sleeping well is a
Yeah.
skill and a habit. If we can start the habit right, now the kids won't have to break bad habits when they become adults. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So
Kim,
true.
you had mentioned that at thesleeplady.com, you've got some great resources for our audience to dig into. Can you tell us a little bit about them?
Mhm. Yeah, so I try to give to parents resources from free to working one-on-one with one of my
Hmm.
coaches. My blog has thousands of articles based on the age of your child and then the common problems within those that parents have taught me over the last 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I have several free guides, and then I have a weekly newsletter. And then you can purchase my book. Actually, I have to 3 books. You could purchase one of my 3 books. And then I have a video course. If you're more of a self, starter, then you can enroll in my video course that walks you through creating a sleep plan. There's even an opportunity to check in with one of my coaches about your sleep plan before you start. And then finally, if you feel like, wow, I really need some support, my situation is really complex or
Mm.
unique, or you've tried and failed, or whatever it is, I have a directory of over 200 coaches all over the world who I have personally have trained and mentored, that you can work with.
What a gift to tired parents and kids who deserve the foundation of healthy sleep everywhere, that you are able to create such a network and so many different ways for people to access the information, right? For free, the cost of a book, the course, the coaching for people who just are like really need help. I mean, sleep is one of those legs of the three-legged stool with food and sleep and daily motor activity. Very important to all areas of our kids' lives.
Uh,
You have us drinking from the fire hose here, Kim West, and we appreciate so much, like so many gems today. And so I like to sort of distill it down for those tired parents whose brains might not be firing on all cylinders, like me. Thank you, Gabriel, for waking me up 4 times with growing pains. um, what's like a super practical step that people can just accomplish right away and feel that win, feel like, okay, I know what to do with Kim's information.
I think if you just start with figuring out your child's ideal bedtime window
Mm.
and creating a soothing routine, in their room with the shades down, without screens, and real connection time, that can do wonders in and of itself.
That's
Mhm.
perfect. Yeah. And while you're at it, parents, figure out your own ideal bedtime too, because there's math for that.
And by the way, it's usually between 10 and 11 p.m., they say.
For adults who wake up at like a normal adult time.
Yeah, right.
Um, I know one of the things I said back when the pandemic sort of shut everything down in March, April, May 2020, I said, there will be some silver linings from all this mess. And maybe one of them is that particularly our teenagers and maybe some adults too are getting enough sleep for the
Yes.
first time in
And
years.
and what also happened is that now there, whether we liked it or not, we had the time to do sleep coaching. There wasn't all the, traveling or distractions
Yeah.
or, and so this was really a great time for families to do that. Because remember, sleep also affects our immune system, because we are working on our immune system at night while we're sleeping. So, and we need that in a pandemic.
Yes, that's where we rebuild our cells and yeah, that immune system like blooms at night. We think another interview guest just talked about how we don't think of sleep as an activity. We think it's like doing nothing.
Right.
And they just emphasize like sleep is a massively important activity where your body is doing so much, but we have to create that space in our children's nights and in our own nights. So your information's invaluable. The sleep lady, Kim West. I'm so grateful you spent this time with us, and I know that the parents out there listening to the Healthy Parenting Connector are also grateful, and will be even more grateful when they wake up after a full night's sleep. Thank you so much. It's been great. Audience
Thank
out
you.
there, again, I'm Katie Kimball for the Healthy Parenting Connector. I will see you back next week to connect you who so want to raise these healthy children with experts who have the information you need to build that connection, that confidence, that creativity in your children and in your family and in your own parenting. Thank you so much.